In this lesson, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at the basic workflow that's involved in getting an object from Maya over into Unreal Ed. Now, the Maya PLE, the Personal Learning Edition, ships with the Unreal Tournament 2003 game. It's found on disc number 3, right, Logan?
That's right.
Okay. And once you get it installed, it actually installs with a plugin, and that plugin is what facilitates exchanging the static mesh or the model that you create inside of Maya and sending it over into Unreal Ed. And it's actually relatively easy to do. There's a few steps in there that require a little bit of an understanding of how some of the things work inside of Maya, such as sets and custom attributes. But we're actually going to take a look at how we can create a MEL script in a different section that's going to, let's just say, enhance this process for you. Is that pretty
Sounds
fair?
good.
Okay. So first thing I want to do is talk just for a second about once you get Maya installed, it's a couple things that you're going to have to do. One of the things is I can go ahead and just come back here and minimize everything. Let's just go ahead and minimize Camtasia as well. We can go ahead and come back to My Computer and right-click on it. We'll come down to Properties, come over to Advanced, and you're going to need to come down to Environment Variables. And from Environment Variables, what you're looking for up under System Variables is going to be the path. So we can come down here to the path, and what I'm going to do is just go ahead and hit Edit on it so I can show you this. You're going to want to go to the end on the variable value. You're going to want to go to the end of the path, add a semicolon, and then where your system file is, or excuse me, where your system folder is up underneath Unreal Tournament 2003. So in other words, in our case, it happens to be on D drive up under UT 2003/system. Okay? You need this because when Maya launches, when you have that plugin auto start, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second, Maya is going to turn around and automatically launch Unreal Ed for you. So we'll go ahead and close that out. We've already got it in there. You guys will need to make sure that you do it. And we'll go ahead and just Alt-Tab back over into the PLE. All right, so now we're in the PLE. So let's go ahead and take a look at that plugin. I'm simply going to come up here to Window and then come down to Settings, Preferences, and then from there I'm going to come down to the Plugin Manager. From inside the Plugin Manager, you should find Uneditor. And this is where you need to go ahead and check Loaded so that you can load it, and Auto Load so that every time you start Maya in the future, you don't have to worry about coming back into this area to load it. So Auto Load's pretty important. And once you're done with that, go ahead and close it out. So Logan, is there anything you want to add in reference to setting up the basic Maya PLE?
That should do it. I mean, it's just a matter of the reason you want to set that environment variable first is as soon as you check loaded, it's going to try to find Unreal Ed, and if you don't have that system path set, then it won't find it, and you'll just get an error instead of it loading.
Exactly. So this is really important. Now let's go ahead and spend just a second. Let's go ahead and come on over here to Unreal Ed, and I'm in my textures browser right now. Let's go ahead and come up to File, down and load Humanoid Architecture. And I'm going to go ahead and switch over to, actually, let's just switch over to ceilings. Now, in the basic workflow for 3ds Max lesson, what we did is we came into Unreal Ed and we exported out this texture and this texture, because what I want to show you is how inside of Maya, once you've created a basic object, how you can apply textures to them, and then how that corresponds once the actual geometry comes back into Unreal Ed. And we start out simple. We're just going to use this one on a basic cube. I will go ahead and take a second to point out that this lesson is not about modeling objects. It's about taking a modeled object or modeled geometry from one application, in this case Maya, back over into Unreal Ed. And I'm not worried about anything sophisticated. I'd rather just keep it simple like a cube so that we can also point out what's going on with the grid as well. So inside the Max lesson, what we did is we exported these two things out, but we took a minute to talk about compression, and you can see down here in the bottom corner, this here is DXT1, and it is a compression type. This is a direct draw surface compression or a DirectX compression type, and you've got DXT1, DXT3, and DXT5 available that you can use. And there's other formats as well that you'll find down here in the corner, as well as materials. You'll see like OnePass, etc. But the thing I wanted to point out is once we export these out, in the case of this DXT1, this is actually exported out as a .dds file. And we have a bit of a problem with Maya as far as reading this DirectX compression. We can't. Okay, so what we needed to do as far as Maya is concerned, so that we could use this texture to see how our UVs are actually laid out on the geometry and how the texture is going to be mapped, what we needed to do is go to, what's the site, Logan? Is it developer.nvidia.com?
Yep, that's it.
And basically you'll find a plugin on there available for Photoshop that will allow you to read and write out DDS files. And this enabled us to go ahead and bring these textures in, and then we just simply turned around and saved them out as targas. And now we'll be able to use them back over inside of Maya. Anything you want to add to that, Logan?
Yep, that should about cover it.
Okay. So we have exported these two things out, and we'll see all this in just a minute. So I wanted to point that out real quick. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and come back over into Maya. Now let's go ahead and first start out by talking about the grid. I want to go ahead and set my grid so that it works relatively close to the grid. Actually, it's going to, in essence, it's really going to work dead on. But there's just going to be a scale factor in there. And as a matter of fact, I hate to keep switching back and forth, but let's go ahead and come back over to Unreal Ed real quick, and we can just minimize our browser. Well, that was fun. That was strange. Let's just go ahead and close it. Look at that. That's kind of bizarre. All right, so when we take our browser and we minimize it or close it, it manages to pop us back over into Maya. Lots of fun. All right, so now we're inside of Unreal Ed, and here's what I want to point out. Look down here at the bottom. Right now we've got the grid set up at 16. Logan, you want to talk about this?
Well, a grid of 16 would allow very easy snapping. If you create your objects, or your meshes in this case, to snap to a 16-unit grid, that'll make it very fast and easy because you can stay relatively zoomed out while still snapping pieces together.
Now, let's also look at this. Let's go ahead and right-click over here on a cube builder brush, and the height is 256 by 256 by 256. So let's go ahead and build that, and you can see there it is. So we'll go ahead and close that out, and I'll go ahead and hit Control-S, and there we go. So that's the texture we had last, but this will work. So there's our room that we just created, and we'll end up bringing our static mesh in. But basically what I'm wanting to show over in Maya is these major grid lines, as you're seeing right here. And look in between them, we got subdivisions of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And each one of these divisions, in the case of Unreal Ed, right now represents 16 Unreal units. Right,
Right, of course, because we've got the grid set to 16.
There
right
you
now.
go. So what I want to do is go over into Maya and set it up so I've got major grid lines, and I also have 8 of these subdivisions in here, and I want to be able to set something up that basically when I export it out, I'm going to be working on a grid that's going to look exactly the same over in Maya, and when I bring it in here, I want it to fit this exact cube right here so that I know that I'm dead on. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So let's go ahead and jump back over into Maya, and we'll simply come up here to our menu bar and click on Display. We'll come down to Grid, and we'll go ahead and open up Grid's options. And what we want to do is we're just going to come down here first to grid lines every how many units? Well, I'm going to set this to every 8 units. Okay. And subdivisions. Well, right now, so what I've got basically is a major grid line going every 8 Maya units. And as far as subdivisions, you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that this looks just like over in Unreal Ed, I'll go ahead and set this to 8 as well. Now when I apply this, watch this, everything's about to change. There we go. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and there's my major grid line. Of course, I'd like for my grid to go a little bit further than that. That's not too far out. So I can come up here and, I don't know, let's change it to 64 or something like that. Ooh, not that big. So apply. There we go. Now I've got a bigger grid to work with. And at this point, we're now starting to look a lot more like Unreal Ed. But there's actually a problem. Each one of these little cubes right here, each one of these grid space crossings, this one unit actually represents, Logan, you want to?
One Unreal unit.
One Unreal unit, exactly. Where this exact setup inside of Unreal Ed right now, one of these little units right here represents 16 real Unreal units. In this case, this is one Unreal unit. So what we're going to have to do is we'd have to multiply, if we modeled something right here and we wanted to bring it in and it fit in the same cube over in Unreal Ed with the grid setting right now at 16, we'd have to multiply it by 16 and basically scale it up by 16, right, Logan?
Exactly.
And then it would fit into one grid unit over inside of Unreal Ed at the moment. So when I come in here and I create a cube that fills out, let's just say, going 2 major division lines across from here all the way over to here, and then down 2 as well, so we basically have this cubed area right here, I'll need to take that entire thing and then multiply it up by 16 as far as scale is concerned so that it fits the exact same thing over inside of Unreal Ed. And I'll show you guys how to do that in just a minute. It's not a bad thing. So now that we've got our grid options set, let's go ahead and simply close that out. Let's get busy. I'm going to go ahead and tap the space bar. Now, yes, there are watermarks all over the place. Just bear with us. We needed to use the PLE. It is what ships with Unreal Ed. I mean, this is the real deal right here. And so you guys should be able to follow along with absolutely no problem. Let's go ahead and come over here to a top view. I'm just going to tap my spacebar to enlarge the view. Now I'm going to come up here to create from my menu bar. I'm going to come down to a polygon primitive. And what I want to do is create a cube. Bink. Ooh, that was pretty easy. Now, I want the cube to fit 16 by 16 by 16. Remember, this is 8 units across this way, right? 8 units across this way. Well, basic math tells me that 8 plus 8 is still indeed 16. Of course, some of my students would disagree with me these days. Seems like everybody hates math nowadays. Don't ask me why. Trust me, math is a very good thing. See, was able to add 8 and 8, weren't we? Okay. And going this way, we also have 8 and 8 as well. Now, first thing I want to point out, I cannot come over here, grab the scale tool, and scale this up. This will not work. What I'm doing is I am changing attributes on my transform node. I'm not actually changing the geometry. Right, Logan?
Right. I mean, if you remember in the crash course to Maya, you saw how Maya builds something as separate nodes, and what we're actually going to be exporting is information that comes from previous nodes, not from the transform node itself.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and undo that, or we could simply come over here, click and drag, and type a 1 and hit enter and set it back to a scale of 1. What I want to do is go ahead and come down here to the input node, and I'm going to take the width, the height, and the depth, and type in 16 and hit enter. And there you go. Now you can see that it fits all the way around. And it's actually a cube, of course, width, height, and depth. And we'll see that in just a second. But let's go ahead and point out, I could have gone in and actually snapped my vertices out here to the edges. And we'll start talking about that more when we get into the modeling technique section of this VTM. So let's go ahead and tap spacebar. And we'll come back over here with the perspective view. I'll just put my mouse over the perspective view, tap the spacebar again. Okay, so there you go. If I want to go into a shaded view at this point, I can simply go ahead and press 5 on the keyboard. So now I'm seeing it shaded. Now, the next thing I want to do, there's so many different directions we can go at this point, but basically they all kind of wrap back around to a single point. What I want to do at this point is go ahead and triangulate this. This is something that's very important for Unreal Ed. Very simple to do. From the modeling menu set, come up here to polygons, come down to triangulate, click, piece of cake. Now right now, suddenly it's all shaded. This is because Maya has automatically switched into a sub-object or a component mode thanks to the triangulate command that we just applied to it, which later on we're actually going to show you through Mel how you can do this and then jump back out of it automatically. But right now, at this component mode, you can see I can go in there and actually select the polygon faces that make up this cube. Let's go ahead and switch back over to object mode by clicking object up there. So now we've got a single object right here. And we're starting to build up what is called construction history. We now have a few nodes that's feeding information into basically creating this object. These two nodes are feeding information into the shape node, which is where the true geometry is held. Now what I want to do is go ahead and delete history. So I'll come up here to edit. I'll come down to delete by type, history, and that just cleans everything up for us. It's a good idea, especially once you start modeling. You're going to end up with a lot of polygon extrusions over here, perhaps bevels, tweaks, etc. It's a good idea to clean up history from time to time just to keep it nice and clean while you're working inside of Maya. Now, the next thing that I want to do is let's go ahead and so many different ways, Logan, that we can go about doing this. Let's go ahead and do the texturing part next. Sound good?
Okay, sounds good.
We'll kind of leave the set for last. All right, so what I want to do now is apply a texture to it with that 4x4 stone texture that we exported out. So to go about doing that, what I need to do is come up to Window, come down to Rendering Editors, and then from over here, open up the Hypershade. Hypershade is where we construct all of our materials that we're going to use. Now, when you open up your Hypershade, it's going to look like this right here. You're going to have your bar over here on the side. You're going to have another window up here in this area that's going to show you whether all the materials or textures in your scene, utilities in your scene, lights in your scenes, etc. And then you're going to have your work area down here. What I want to do is go ahead and focus on my work area, so we're going to tell it that that's the only area we want to see. So we've got our work area. And I'm going to start out by clicking right here and switching over to Create Materials. And I'm just going to middle-click drag a Lambert out. You could just left-click on it, but I middle-click drag everything inside of Maya. So this is going to end up being my material that I'm going to apply back here. And it's got, if I double-click on it to open up the attribute editor, it's got a series of parameters that allow me to change the way the material is going to actually look. Change the color, change transparency, etc. In other words, example, click on color, make it red, and the guy's now red. Easy enough. But I want color to be driven by a texture. I don't want to have it, its color set to whatever the shading algorithm's coming up with right here. I don't want that. So what I need to do, I could rather click on the map icon right here, or back in Hypershade, what I can do is click, go down to Create Textures, simply come down and locate File, and then middle click, drag File on top of the Lambert material, let go, and what I'm going to get is a pop-up menu that's going to say, all right, which one of these guys do you want to connect the output of file into? And I'm going to connect the output of it into color so that the file is driving the color of my Lambert material. So we'll go ahead and say color. And so now you can see it's just black because at the moment we don't have an actual texture in there. Now the network is becoming a little bit more involved than just two nodes. I can simply come up here and select my Lambert material and then come up here to the toolbar and click on the Show Up and Downstream Connections. Dink. And this is what we really have. We have a Place 2D Texture node, which is sending placement information over to a file texture. The file texture, through its output, right there you can see file1.outColor is sent over to lambert2.color. That information is sent over here to the color, and then this is sent out to the shading group. And the shading group's job basically is to apply the material to specific surfaces. So in the moment, we're going to actually see how the surface gets involved. So let's go ahead and first assign this material by simply middle click, dragging and dropping over here. And you notice the tint of gray just changed. Now what I want to do is assign a texture. So I'll go ahead and select my file, and I can double click it. I can hit Control A, or I can go up to Window and open up Attribute Editor. But in the end, I'm inside the Attribute Editor on the File node, and now I'm going to come down and locate Image Name, come over here and click on Folder, and then let's go ahead and switch over into our D drive, and we just got to kind of dig for just a second up under Unreal Tournament 2003. There's a VTM folder that we've created, and this is where we have exported out our files. This is where we've got the TGA files or the Targa files for these two ceiling textures that we exported out originally in the DDS format and then converted from Photoshop. So we're going to grab, which one is it, Logan? 3?
Yep.
So we'll go ahead and tell it to open. Look at that. There it is. You can see over here it's now filling in this node, and it's being fed over here, and you can now see that it's applied to the sphere sample. So what I'll do is go ahead and close this. Now, even though it's applied to this, you may be wondering, why don't we see it over here? I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt, middle mouse, drag this over to the side. What we need to do is, a quick review, the 4 button is for wireframe, 5 is for shaded, 6 will enable hardware texturing so that we can actually see our textures. And you can see that we've already got UVs generated so that this thing fits on there perfectly. So we're looking at 4 across, 4 down. Piece of cake, right, Logan?
Right. It appears that the default UV mapping on a cube works out just fine here.
You got it. So now what I want to do is let's just go ahead and minimize the hypershade at the moment. It's down here. We'll come back to it in a minute. Now let's go ahead and actually set this guy up for exports. Let's go ahead and middle click and drag it back over to the center. What I need to do is take this object and put it in a set. Sets inside of Maya serve as just simple containers that you can put components in, you can put objects in, and you can use sets for quick selection. There's all sorts of neat things that you can use sets for as far as doing production work inside of Maya. But in this particular case, the set is going to, in the end, represent our static mesh. Look at it like that. So to do this, all I need to do is select my geometry, come up to Create, come down to Sets. There's Set. I'm going to come over here and open up the Options box. So open up Options. This will allow me to go ahead and name it, and we'll call this, My Cube. Sounds good, Logan?
Yep.
We always do things My Cube when we're doing these basic things. So we'll do a simple Apply and Close, and now this guy is actually in a set. And what I want to do is open up, come up here to Window, my outliner. My outliner kind of serves as a select by name dialog, along with the ability to do many other things as well. But right now we can simply come through here and we can select things by simply clicking on it. But you can see my cube right now. And if I expand my cube, you can actually see pCube1, which is this guy. That's his name, pCube1. You can see him inside of my cube. Well, I need to simply select the set. And then what I need to do is go ahead and open up my attribute editor. So I'll go ahead and hit Control A. And I'm going to have to add some custom attributes to the set so that basically I can specify the package, the group, and the scale. So to do this, right now if we come down to extra attributes and we expand it, there's nothing in there. So a couple of ways we can go about adding attributes. With an object selected, you can simply come up to Modify and click Add Attribute, Or if you're already in the attribute editor, you can simply come up to attributes, add attributes like this, and now let's go ahead and start adding some things. The first one we're going to add is going to be package, P-A-C-K-A-G-E, and it's going to be, data type is going to be string. We're going to type in characters, and we'll go ahead and say add. Check it out. There's package. Now what I want to do is I have to type in group. Okay, type is string. I'll go ahead and add it. This is so I can specify my group. Now let's go ahead and type in scale. And he is going to be a float. Why a float? So that we can type in numbers. Okay. Everything okay so far, Logan?
Yep, makes sense.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and just click OK now because we're done with it. So now we've got package, group, and scale. And while we're in here, let's go ahead and fill it out. For package, let's go ahead and just put it in my level. We're always working with just keeping things in the map itself. So my level. As for group, let's create a group called cubes. And we'll keep everything in cubes since we're just dealing with cubes right now. And for scale, if I put this at a scale of 1, basically this guy is going to come into Unreal as being 16 units by 16 units by 16 units, Unreal units. So basically what you're going to see instead of Unreal is it's just going to fill in basically one cube. That's it.
It's going to look like it's going to fill just one grid unit.
Just
basically.
one grid unit, absolutely. So let's go ahead and say by a factor of 16. And you guys can whip out your calculators right now and check this out. But if you say 16 times 16, what number do you get, Logan?
256.
256. Look at that. The mathematics is suddenly becoming more complicated. We went from a simple 8 plus 8 to 16 times 16. Wait till they see what's coming next. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so we've got a scale of 16 now. So now let's go ahead and see what we need to do next. So let's go ahead and close this out. We don't need attribute editor no more. At this point, it's very easy. I'm going to simply come down here to my command line, and I'm going to type in uneditor, E-D-I-T-O-R. A capitalization is extremely important because, of course, Mel is case sensitive, okay, and this is basically typing in a Mel command. So uneditor. The next thing I have to do is I have to specify. What do I got to specify? One or two things here.
Basically, what type of stuff we're going to be exporting, animation or static mesh.
Exactly, and since this is a static mesh, we're going to tell it mesh, all lowercase. I'm at spacebar again. Now what I need to do is tell it the name of my set, or if you look at it like this, the name of my static mesh, which is going to be my cube. All right, and that's it. Simply hit enter. And if everything went well, you can see over here, by the way, my command feedback line, result 1, static meshes were exported. Now let's go ahead and simply Alt-Tab over into Unreal Ed. Let's come up here, open up our static mesh browser. Let's drop down, locate my level, which was not there a second ago, which has my cube in it, but we have an issue. Look at this. We've got the cube in there, but the cube does not have a material assigned to it. It doesn't have a texture assigned. We can see this by coming down here to the parameter section, expanding my materials, coming up under Sub-Zero, and material, none. Now, let's go ahead and come back over here to textures. We've got the right one selected. Let's come back over here to static meshes, click on material, and come over and hit use, update this, and look at that, Logan.
That's dead on.
That's dead on. Now, how would we go about it in Maya, making the proper settings so that when I brought the cube into Unreal Ed, I actually saw the material being used right away? Well, there's another custom attribute that we're going to have to add. But I'm going to first highlight this right here, the package, the group, the actual file name. I'm going to copy it, and you'll see why in just a second. Now let's go ahead and Alt-Tab back over to the Maya PLE. Let's go ahead and bring the hypershade back up and watch this. To make this work, I need to come over to the shading group now and select that. Then I'm going to go and open up the attribute editor. Sorry, here's the shading group, Lambert 2 SG for shading group. You can see it selected over here. In fact, we can just kind of zoom in so you can see it. There you go. Now, here we are, extra attributes again. If we expand it, nothing's under it. Let's go ahead and come up to attributes, add an attribute. And what this one's going to be is UR for Unreal, capital M, so capital U, capital R, capital N, A-T-E-R-I-L. So UR material, capital N, A-M-E. So UR material name. Its type is going to be a string because, again, we're going to be putting a name in there. And I'll go ahead and click OK. And there it is. Watch this. I'm going to select this, Control V to paste that in there, and take that little mark out right there. What we have now is a specification as to what package, what group, what texture do we want to use. You have to do this, okay? This way, when we export it back over there, this exact data is already going to be there, and it's going to already know where to get the texture from, and everything should work fine. Let's find out. But before we find out and prove this, we can go ahead and close our attribute editor out. I'm going to Alt-Tab back over into Unreal Ed for a second. With my cube selected, I'll go ahead and simply come up to Edit, Delete. That'll delete that out. It will also go ahead and get rid of my level. You'll notice my level is not in here anymore because there was no static meshes left inside the package. Now I'll go ahead and Alt-Tab back over. I did that just so that you can see when we bring it in fresh again that this time it does indeed have the texture applied to it. I'll simply come down here now into the command line. Watch this. I'll hit the up arrow, so kind of like a old DOS key in a way. Got a history there.
Or your game console.
You got it. And I'll go, yeah, absolutely. Good point. I was thinking in a technical world. I'll go ahead and hit enter. Now let's go ahead and Alt-Tab back over. Look at that. We're staring at it. We didn't have to do any extra work. Up under Material Sub-Zero, the material parameter, look at that. Texture, blah, 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 is already set for us. Pretty cool, eh?
Right. Basically, just tell the exporter that we were going to be using a specific texture and just went ahead and threw that into the static mesh when it exported it.
Yep. All right. So now let's make things a little bit more complicated. What I want to do is just like inside of 3ds Max, I showed how we could use multiple materials. I want to go ahead and set it up to use multiple materials inside of Maya as well, and show you how to do a little bit of UV mapping modifications. Just very simple stuff. So we'll go ahead and Alt-Tab back over, come back into Maya. Now we can go ahead and let's see. There's a couple of ways we can go about doing this. At this point, I'm just kind of thinking about which way do we want to go. Let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to Materials. I'm going to drag myself another Lambert out. Go ahead and switch over to Textures, Create Textures. I'll come down here, middle-click, drag a file out, hook it up to color. Just getting myself set up. All right, so we've got these two guys right here. I'll go ahead and come in, double-click on this guy, bring up the Attribute Editor, and we'll go ahead and bring in number 2, Logan.
Yep.
Go ahead and open that up. Yep, that's the right one. And now I want to apply that texture. Go ahead and close out the outliner for now. I want to apply that texture to all of my faces all the way around. So I need to select my geometry, and I can rather come up here to drop into a component mode and make sure that Polyfaces is selected, as you see there. I just right-clicked on this up here. And now all I'm going to do is simply select, marquee select, around, and you'll notice that they're shaded, but on top and on bottom, they're not selected. You know what, Logan? Just because it's bothering me, I'm going to come up here to show. I'm going to turn grid off. Basically, our viewport's a little too busy. It's getting on my nerves. All right, so now we've got this thing selected all the way around. Now all I'm going to do is come back over here to my material. I'm not going to left-click on it because that'll select it. I'll simply right-click, come down to Assign Material to Selection. Dink, and there it is. So let's go ahead and come back over into Object Mode, and so that you can now see that the top, okay, and this guy, all is cool. But I need to go a step further. What I want to do now is go ahead and come in here and stretch this guy out, just like we did over inside of the basic 3ds Max workflow, so that people can compare the difference between the two. They can see exactly how it's done. So, in two different applications. I haven't finished my thought there. So what I'm going to do is simply come over here. I need to go back into a component mode so that I can select certain faces. This time I'll do it a different way. I'll simply right-click on my object and drag down the face. Okay, now you can see that's a very convenient and fast way to switch over into this mode. And I'll marquee select around just these two. So I got those, and I've got the ones behind it. Okay, so that's good. Now what I want to do is go ahead and come in here, and we'll just go up to Edit Polygons, down to Texture, and what we want to do is apply a planar mapping to it. And so there's our planar mapping, and we have a manipulator. If you look over here, we now have Show Manipulator highlighted because we're working with a manipulator. And at this point, I can simply come in here and grab the little red rectangle over here, which is my scale, and simply scale this out so that I'm looking at 4 of those guys, about like that. And just like we did in the other lesson where we've got the line across the top and the line across the bottom, let's simply just drag this up so that kind of acts like a border. Simple enough. And the other side, it's got the same thing. So I'm nice and happy with that. Now let's go ahead and come in here and select these guys. So I've got those two back there. All right, so now, again, same thing. Edit Polygons, Texture, another planar mapping. Applied, but this time the projection is turned the wrong way, or my planar mapping is turned the wrong way. I need to rotate it 90 degrees around the y-axis, going up and down. So I can simply come over here to the channel box and take Rotate Y, adjust it to 0. It was already at 90, so I just took 90 away from it. And so now we're back at 0, but it's now right. And again, we'll do the same thing. We'll scale it up so that we've just got 4. So we're looking at about right there. Come up here, can move it up. By the way, you can come into the center area and you can grab and move this around too. So I mean, you really get the feel of working over inside of Unreal Ed when you're manipulating textures around. Very, very similar to the interactive placement. So let's go ahead and undo that. So right there. So this looks good. Everything matches up. I do want to point out something that's strange that kind of happens. But if you look at the top right here where we've got our border up underneath it, we got this wire. Watch for the wire. Let's see if it flips around upside down. So at this point, I can go about doing things a couple of different ways. I'm just going to come over here. Let's just right-click on it and say Select. That'll get me out of the component mode. If we look over in the channel box now, you can see that I've got 2 polyplanar projections in there that's feeding into the whole mix. But I don't have my material set up properly so that this guy will translate back over when I export it back or out to Unreal Ed and bring it into Unreal Ed. So what I need to do, again, is come back down to my Hypershade. From inside my Hypershade, same thing you saw before. I'm going to grab this guy, show up and downstream graph, grab the shading group node. Again, zoom in so that you can see shading group. And by the way, I'm using Alt, left, and middle mouse button to zoom in like that. I'll go ahead and double click. Brings up my attribute editor. I'm on the shading group again. Come down, extra attributes. There's none underneath it. Come up here to attributes, add attributes, and do the exact same thing that you saw a minute ago. Capital U-R-M, then A-T-E-R-I-A-L-S, and then capital N-A-M-E.
Material name, not materials.
And yes, you're absolutely right, Logan. Getting carried away there. So there we go. UR material name. Type is a string. Go ahead and click OK. Now, I need to go ahead and come back over here to Unreal Ed and get the new one. All we need to do is, I think it's O2HA.
Yes.
Okay, so we can just go ahead and grab this guy again, and we'll just change it ourselves. So go ahead and Control-C, tab back over, and paste it. Cruise on over here and change that to a 2, like such. Let's go ahead and close that out. And you see anything else we need to do? You ready to send this guy over? Let's go ahead and change the static mesh name so that they can see now how you can use a simple geometry, then make very quick modifications and make it appear up as static mesh 2. Let's say you were doing a light or something, and you added some more details so that it was another kind of light. You can quickly go about changing things by doing this. Come up here to Window, down here to Outliner, grab My Cube, and I'll just change this one to be My Cube 2, and hit Enter. Okay? And all is good. Everything is still where we want it to go. Again, if I wanted to, I could just come into, well, we could rename it that way, but I could just come into my attribute editor, package is my level, group is in the cube still, and scale is still at 16, so that everything's right. The only thing we've got going on now is texturing. We're using 2 textures. So I'm going to come back down here, hit the up arrow once, and add a number 2 to the end of this. Hit Enter to export it. Again, you can see over here, everything exported fine. Alt-tab over to Unreal Ed. Look at this. We now automatically have My Cube 2 there. I'll click on it. Look at that. There it is. And if we go ahead and let's go ahead and move up and look down, forward, everything's dead on, but we do have some funniness going on that I was talking about a second ago. Remember the wire that was running along the top? It's running along the bottom. Keep an eye on your material rotating around upside down like that. Let's go ahead and switch back over into Maya and let's fix it. Basically what we need to do is flip it around inside of here. Watch this for being easy. I'll simply select it. I'll see which axes I need to rotate it on. So we'll come in here. We'll grab this one. Actually, let's start with, we'll just do that one. This one needs to be rotated around on Z, 180 degrees. I'll come down to the Rotate Z, type in 180, hit Enter, and now the wire's on the bottom. I'll click on Polyplanar Projection 2. That's the other guy. He's along the X-axis. Again, I'll come down to Rotate X, 180 degrees. He's now flipped upside down, so the wires are both upside down lining up. So now we can just go ahead and come in here, and same thing as before. Just simply hit up. We're going to export that guy out again. All is done. Alt-tab over, and look at this. My wires are now on the top. Pretty simple, Logan?
Simple enough. You saw that they were reversed, so just go back to Maya and reverse them so that they come in the right way once you're in Unreal Ed.
Now the last thing that we need to prove, the final thing. We've got this guy that we want to add. We'll simply come over here. We'll right-click. We'll add static mesh. Well, how about that? It lines up just like described. Dink, dink. And let's go ahead and, that might cause things to kind of flip again. I don't want that to happen. So let's just come on over here and, I was afraid of that. All right, good. And let's go ahead and just control and drag that up. Dink. And you can see all the way around. It was indeed perfect fit. Textures are good. Everything's the way we set it up inside of Maya. So with that, let's go ahead and jump back over to Maya real quick, and let's do a fast recap of what happened in this lesson. First, we took just a second to talk about, after installing Maya PLE from disk number 3 that comes with Unreal Tournament 2003, that you need to go right-click on My Computer and basically get in there and go over to Advanced, go to Environment Variables, and change path. Logan, you were going to say something?
Right, I mean, basically, the plugin just needs to be able to find Unreal Ed, and what we did is we appended the path to the UT 2003 system folder, which is, of course, where Unreal Ed resides.
You got it. Actually, we appended, you said the path, too. Let's flip that around. Ooh, you had me thinking.
Appended to the path.
Yeah, we appended to the path. There we go. All right, then once we appended it to the path, I showed you guys that you need to make sure you come up to Windows, Settings, Preferences, and then go down to the Plugin Manager and make sure this guy's set to auto-load, and you can go ahead and click Load It. Again, that's Uneditor. Once that's taken care of, when you launch the Maya PLE next time, it will automatically launch Unreal Ed with you, which means there's a connection established between the two. Then you get in here, you start doing your modeling. Once you've got your modeling complete, what you're going to need to do is make sure you triangulate it. You also, well, actually, before you even do your modeling, you need to set your scale for your grid, okay? And you saw that we did that by coming up simply to Display, Open Options for Grid, and we set ours to 8 with 8 subdivisions. And then we set 64. Of course, this number is whatever makes you happy. It's how much you're going to see the grid go out in perspective view. So once we had that set, did our modeling, which in this case was a very simple cube. Then we talked about assigning a material to it, making sure you go into the shading group and adding the custom attribute UR material name, and that the fact that you have to actually have the package, the group, and the texture name when you put it inside, when you add it inside of Maya. And then from there, we talked about you need to come in and add a set that contains your object. And then with the set, you needed to basically go into the attribute editor and add 3 custom attributes to this guy: package, group, and scale. And then what we did is we went in there and we specified my level, the group name, and the scale. And we talked about by a factor of 16, since we're working inside of Maya, 1 grid unit inside of Maya is indeed equal to 1 Unreal unit back inside of Unreal Ed. So we've multiplied this up by 16, and with this guy being made at 16 by 16 by 16, then that gave us our 256 by 256 by 256 cube. Once we had all of that done, it was just a matter of simply coming down here into our command line and typing in Uneditor with the E capitalized space, then mesh, because it's a static mesh that we're outputting, space, and the name of your set, which in the end, remember, is going to be the name of your static mesh. And then it automatically appears inside of Unreal Ed. Okay? And we talked about some of the texture concerns in regards to planar mapping. And I think that's going to pretty much cover just basic workflow, Logan.
All right, just a few things I wanted to point out real quick. Is you saw how we actually set the package and group back when we were in Maya. Instead of course, if you would use the import from the static meshes browser, you'll know that you can set it from there. And the whole reason we had to set it from Maya instead of the static mesh browser is because there's sort of a direct connection established between Maya and Unreal Ed.
Right.
And so we had to know ahead of time where this mesh was going to go. And that's why we had to set it up as those extra attributes instead of after we were in Unreal Ed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very good. So with that, is that about everything? Can you think of anything else?
Well, and the thing with the textures, of course, those textures that we were looking at when we were inside of Maya, we were just using those as references. Those didn't actually get imported back into Unreal Ed.
That's a fact. Absolutely. And it was very important to use those as references for the simple fact that we could see over there how our textures were being mapped onto the cube. And you can see right here that we've got them just dead on. And we actually, inside the 3ds Max basic workflow, you can see that we have the ability now to come in and change out both of the different materials. And if we wanted to, we could do the exact same thing we did in that lesson by coming over here to textures. And what did we change it to? Walls, I believe. And then we just kind of came on down and we found this guy right here, I think it was. And we can come back over to static meshes and then just come across over here and use. And yeah, that's so cool. Just like the one we did inside of 3ds Max.
So you can see the only thing we really pulled from Maya was its UV coordinates, not the texture itself, as we can just go in here and swap that out as we want to.
Exactly. And in this case, though, we actually did pull something. We pulled the data over that served as a pointer to the texture.
Right.
inside of Unreal.
And if you think about that, where that's really cool is, I mean, yeah, you saw it was just a real quick change that you could have made in the static mesh browser. But what's cool is if you had saved out your file from Maya and then loaded it up at a later time, then you keep that setting of what texture it had. So it's kind of like being able to keep your mesh textured, but have it still in Maya, so you can like work on it later and not all of a sudden wonder where your textures went and then forget what texture you're using in the first place. So it keeps it kind of convenient for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think is that good enough to get them kind of up and running?
All right, that's good.
Awesome. Well, that's going to conclude this lesson right here. Hope you guys got a lot out of it, and thanks a lot. See ya.